Hey everybody, welcome back to the midweek Bible study with me. We do this every Wednesday at noon, and today we are jumping into the book of Song of Songs. So this is going to be a fun one because maybe a lot of you who have been reading the Bible for a while, you know that this book hits just a little differently than most books in the Bible. There's definitely passages in Song of Songs that are a little bit steamy, a little bit racy, but that's okay. If it's in the Bible, we should talk about it. God put it there for a reason. So as we jump into our study of Song of Songs, what do you know about it? I would love to know, especially if you've got any funny stories about this book, like embarrassing moments. I know I've had a few of those, like when you're a little kid, in like Sunday school, and like you can read any book. And I remember specifically like doing one of these open the Bible kind of deals when called upon to do devotions, and it's like, well, I'll just like open the Bible. And unfortunately for my class, Song of Songs is kind of in the middle of the Bible, and so when you like open it, there's a chance it'll fall in this little 8-chapter book. And so I did one of those, and there was a new rule instituted for our Sunday school class, which was no picking passages from Song of Songs. And so there's like certain passages of the Bible that are just not appropriate for all times because of the content of this. So if you have a story, I would love to hear a little bit about those embarrassing moments. But for real though, it is in the Bible for a reason, and we are going to get into that. I don't want you to miss the theme of the book, so I'm just going to tell it to you right off the bat. The theme is that all love, every kind of love that people exhibit towards one another, all love points to a deeper love. It points to God's love. Let's check out what Song of Songs is all about. Kind of a summary. It's a short collection of prophetic poems. It's powerful and puzzling. Song of Songs as a name, it's a little bit weird. Sometimes some Bibles talk about it like Song of Solomon. There's a question though, is like, what does that of mean? It's an expression. It goes for a long, like the Holy of Holies, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, right? It just means that it's the greatest of an already great thing. Like the Holy of Holies is the place in the temple that's the most holy. And the King of Kings is the highest king over every king, right? And so this is a song that's really above every other song that's out there. It's deeper and it's better than any other song. Sometimes they say Song of Solomon, and that's really where we get that like, well, what is this of all about anyway? Does that mean that Solomon is the author? I would doubt that. I mean, I would caution a little bit against that. Traditionally, Solomon is viewed as the author, but like there's a problem. Is that Solomon, he doesn't exactly have the reputation of being an expert on love, right? Solomon is a guy who had 700 wives and 300 concubines. He's not the guy, like if he lived today, right? He's not the guy that you and I would walk up to and like, hey man, I've got some questions about like love. Can you help me out? He's not the guy we would go to for that. So he's probably not the author of this. What that of means is that Song of Solomon is probably that it was written in the wisdom tradition of Solomon. Not that he was the author of it or that he was a main character in it, although stick around to the end and he does make an appearance, kind of a what not to do situation, but it's probably in his line. Like there's a lot of wisdom that we can glean from love. So we've got some main characters. They're not named. Some Bibles say like beloved or loved. Other ones say him or her. There's some friends that make an appearance, but the two main characters are really the main voice, which comes from a woman clearly, and there's also a man's voice that is repeated throughout. There's this couple that are pursuing each other. And it's a book that, as you read any part of it, you would know that it's all about love and desire. And there's this quote that I found that somebody once said that how can you grasp God's love when we can't even understand the depth of human love? There's a lot to this book that's just irrational. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, even the way that it's written, it skips around all the time. You have no idea what they're talking about. It's very confusing. And so is love, right? It's kind of a beautiful way of describing like just this sensation of being in love, and the author very poetically is kind of all over the place. But there is some themes that come out. And so I'm just going to spend some time on the introduction and the conclusion so that we can really get an overview of what this crazy book is actually about. So we have this couple. This couple, right off the bat, we're told that they're engaged and they can't wait to be together. Emphasis on be together, right? That's a little bit of a euphemism, but they're so excited. So it's this love story, and there's not a clear narrative. There's not even really clear coherence to the whole thing, and that's just kind of like love, right? It doesn't always make sense. But we do see some themes coming out. A couple themes in particular. We have the hide and seek theme, the seeking and finding, the searching for one another, about walking through the woods or walking through this garden, calling out the other person's name, wondering where they are. And time after time throughout the book, it's like they're seeking for one another, they're searching for one another, and then they find, and then they embrace. And just as things are getting a little bit steamy, they're separated again, and the whole thing starts over once more. And so there's like that searching and finding theme. There's also the theme, like straight up just physical attractiveness. There's so many just what looks today like a preposterous understanding of like description of physical traits, right? Like there's repeated quotes about like eyes like doves, and his hair is like a herd of goats, his teeth is like lambs. Like what in the world? That her neck is a tower, lips drip honey. I mean, if you were to take those literally, right? Like think about that for just a minute. His hair is like goats, eyes like doves. That paints a really strange picture. It's absolutely not, of course, to be taken literally, but the person is just like searching for words to describe this powerful emotion, this powerful trait of love. So we have their joy of their attraction to one another, the meaning of these images, spiraling repetition, these words, these descriptions. They're repeated throughout the book in all of its 8 chapters, and they're used to kind of like spiral up tension. So every time they find each other and they just start describing each other's physical traits once more, they keep on doing this again and again and again. And it builds excitement, it builds enthusiasm over and over and over until we get to like the end of the book, which is like finally they're there, they're embracing. It's this extraordinarily powerful moment in this conclusion. And this is, if you're looking for like a memory verse or just something to take away from the book, this is the conclusion of the book from Song of Songs 8. And I'll just pick up verses 6 and 7. This is also a popular wedding song. I think I did probably 2 or 3 weddings last year that used this verse as their wedding passage, and it's a perfect one. Listen to it. It says, "Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. Love is as strong as death. It's a jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like a mighty flame, like a blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Waters can't quench love. Rivers can't wash it away. If one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, he would be utterly scorned." Like you can't buy love. Are you kidding me? That's insulting. And right there in the wisdom tradition of Solomon, you see something about love, that love is beautiful, but it's also dangerous. It's jealousy unyielding as the grave. They're like this fire, blazing flame. River can't even wash it away. That love has the power of destruction, but love also has the power to give life. It points to this human longing of wanting to know someone and wanting to be known by them. And you see love as a theme throughout Song of Solomon as being a gift of God. Now that would be a perfect time to end the book, wouldn't it? Like on that, you can't buy love. It's so powerful and dangerous and beautiful and potentially destructive. Like that would be a good opportunity to end on. But the author of Song of Songs doesn't end there. The Song of Songs goes on to share one final kind of wacky story where Solomon, remember Song of Solomon? Solomon finally steps onto scene, and he does exactly what the author says you should never do and that you can't do, is that he tries to buy love. He offers somebody money to be in love with him. And of course, that turns out exactly how the author said that it would. The woman rejects Solomon, and then it goes back to the man and the woman, the main characters in the story, not Solomon, somebody else, the couple, the engaged couple. And he calls out for her, and they find each other, and she begs him to run away with her. And that's it. There's no conclusion. It just ends. And you don't find out what happened. Again, kind of like love. There's no real conclusion to love. It just goes. It's happily ever after, right? They're living their lives now with one another. Okay, so the question, it's a strange book. Like we said earlier, it hits a little different than every other book in the Bible. What in the world is this thing doing in the Bible? Well, there's a few interpretations. The first couple are similar. The Jewish and the Christian interpretation is that these are very, very allegorical, right? That the love story that's told between him and her is actually a love story that's being told between God and Israel. And we see that in the Old Testament, the Jewish tradition, between Hosea. We'll get to that one later. In the Christian tradition, the love story between him and her is an allegory for the love story between Christ and the church. We see that repeated throughout Paul's writings. In Ephesians, for example, when we see that that a husband should love his wife like Christ loved the church, right? And you have this strong connection between those two. So it kind of makes sense. It's biblical and it sticks, it lands. But I think there's probably a little bit more going on in Song of Songs than just an allegory for something else. I mean, after all, guys, it is graphic. Need I remind you of some of those things, like his hair is like a herd of goats, teeth like lamb. We got the tower, like neck like a tower. It's overly graphic to be just an allegory. If the author was going for just allegory, I think that they would have gone with something else. And that more is probably an allegory plus something else, is that there's this strange, also like repetition of a garden image. Several times, you guys, throughout the book, there's references how all of these actions happen in a garden or running through a garden. And you have this picture where they're naked, they're vulnerable, they're safe, and they're in a garden in one another's arms. Does that sound familiar to you? Right? I think the author, writing from this Jewish perspective, is bringing us back to a time before sin, before selfishness was injected into love by sin. The author was bringing us to a time in the Garden of Eden when everything was right and as it was supposed to be, when love was untainted by sin and selfishness. And that's what love is supposed to do. That love is supposed to point to unselfish, unsinful, godly kind of love. And that's where our theme comes from, that all love points to God's love, or at least it should. So how do you spot Jesus in a book about physical love, especially when Jesus lived a single life? What is this supposed to mean? Well, most love today is tainted, pretty significantly tainted by selfishness, is trying to get what they want from each other. But Song of Songs shows a different picture. Song of Songs shows a picture of trying to give what they can for the other person. And that's where Jesus' love is very, very clarifying. Jesus' love is this true love. It shows Jesus' love as a costly love that God gives what cost him the absolute most, his own son. And God seeking the chasing, pursuing, finding, God chasing us down really, truly without end, no matter what. I think it's a pretty cool picture of the godly kind of love that he demonstrates in Jesus Christ and asks us to participate with him. And there's more, because you can often kind of see is that we become like those that we love. Some of you know people maybe who have been together for a long, long time. And you can notice that they start to think and they act. They use the same mannerisms. Even the way they tell stories is just similar. Some people say even people who've been together for a long, long time even start to look like one another. If that's true, then I'm going to start to look like a 5-foot Asian woman, but that's probably not the case. But we do start to act like each other. We become like those we love. And that's also the point that God shows so powerfully his love for us in giving to us for our benefit, giving what cost him the most, his own son. And then as we love him in return, we become more and more like him. At Encounter Church, we say all the time is that we learn to live and love more and more like Jesus all the time. All right, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week, Wednesday at noon, for another round of Bible study, covering another book of the Bible each week. I'm going to leave up on the screen here for a little while some reflection questions. If you're watching this on your own, you can hit pause and just kind of go through those in your head to make it land just a little bit more. If you're watching it in a group setting, while the questions are on the screen, it's a great time to hit pause and talk about it as a group. All right, guys. Until next week at noon, take care.